Hello, Not Manly here, and welcome to an actual English presentation of how to install the Juno Sequoia Planet Pack into a game of Kerbal Space Program. I'm going to start with a KSP 1.11.1 installation, which was available as of today. Normally you would find it in your Steam folder under Steam Apps, Common, and then Kerbal Space Program, but we're going to make a special folder just for games that have add-ons in them, or modded games. I put it in the Program Files folder because I have some extra security on my PC that allows things from the Program Files folder to run, but not outside of there. So I could have any number of modified games in here, including the one I have here for Juno Sequoia. I happen to name it by the version of KSP and the version of Copernicus. Make sure that this folder has read-write permissions given to the built-in users group right here. This happens to be the computer name, but you can just say built-in users, right? And then remove any other permissions that you don't need. You're going to need to have admin access to your PC to do this, but at least this way, if you go to modify this folder, you're not going to get any more user account control prompts. And whatever mechanism you use on your computer, if it's not running Windows, if it's running Linux or Mac OS, just do something very similar to this, and you should be okay. And there we go, we're going to replace everything, make sure everything in there has the same permissions. And then we're going to test play it in just a bit. This is again a basic, non-modified game copied from the Steam Apps folder on another computer actually. And there we go, so we're just going to launch that, and we're going to make sure it launches. What are we waiting for? Oh, there it goes. It can take a little while. I did launch this one earlier, that's why it's already operating in full screen mode. This is just your basic game. We want to make sure that the thing works properly without any errors or pauses or lockups or whatever. Just make sure this game runs. And make sure it runs without requiring admin access on your computer. And there we go. I've already got a save game in here, and it works, but we're just going to do a quick test flight. We're just going to make sure this thing works. We're going to accelerate it all the way up to 4 times regular speed, just to speed through this quickly. Alrighty, let's get the stock Kerbal X out up on the launch pad and get this thing up into space. There we go. I have the sound muted, but don't worry about that. The sound should work on your computer. If it does not, well, that's a different problem entirely. Nothing to do with this. Again, this is the stock game. I just want to make sure that this game works as designed. There we go. Moon, we're going to catch up to you in a bit. There we go. Now, I'm running this on a virtual machine right now, and for some reason the mouse look is not working when I hold down the right mouse button to drag. Fortunately, the arrow keys do work and I can use that, and my mouse wheel does work for zoom out and zoom in. But that'll do just for demonstration purposes. Now that we know that this works, we're going to stick a matching version of Copernicus. In this case here, for KSP 1.11.1, I'm going to use the Bleeding Edge edition. This is the only one I know of that works. And it was working as of today, about February 2021. If you're using an older version of KSP, definitely get the more stable Copernicus Continued edition, which supports KSP 1.10 and earlier now. Make sure the game runs just with Copernicus by itself with the stock system. There will be a few noticeable differences once you get the game going, so you'll be able to tell if Copernicus is working properly or not. Kerbin is going to look slightly different because you're going to be facing a different part of the planet. Otherwise, we'll send up our stock Kerbal X, look around, make sure that the terrain looks right, and we're not having any other issues here. Yeah, looks pretty normal so far. Yeah, there we go. For some reason the scatters aren't showing up, but that's okay. And now that Copernicus is working, finally we plop in there the Je ne sais quoi edition. The current one as of February 2021 is 0.9.0, and it includes something called Rational Resources by Jade of Mar. You want to include that for a more full experience, but you can omit that if you want to play just a regular game with the stock ore resource. I don't know. I think it's more interesting having that in there. We'll just drop that in there. Je ne sais quoi is a very big package at over 4 gigabytes, so be careful with that. And after installing that, we want to delete these caches and we want to delete the settings files out of the beginning of the game. We want to get rid of these 3 files here, the settings config, the physics config, and the part database. These will be recreated for you when you start the game. And note where the logs are kept for Copernicus. Like every add-on maker tends to say these days, no logs, no support. Make sure you save those logs if you run into problems. And now we cut over to the French music because we are playing Je ne sais quoi. And yeah, we are on 1.11.1. I haven't really play tested this, but it seems to work just for this demonstration. There we go. So, let me show you something here. First, that Kerbin looks very different from the stock Kerbin. That's how you know it's worked. But let me warn you about something. It is a very memory-intensive planet pack. On the 16 gigabyte virtual machine, I am using, well, I'm using 8 gigabytes now, but it peaks at over 10 gigabytes during launch, so make sure you have that memory available. I wouldn't recommend anything less than a 16 gigabyte PC to run this on. And now, we need to change the terrain settings, but I also go into here and I set these things to my preference. Doesn't matter what you pick in here. The general settings are pretty much up to you. Just leave the display Kerbin time there. Okay, here's where it gets interesting, the graphics. Make sure you are using a Je ne sais quoi version of the terrain detail setting. There is a low, a default, and a high. I have a very high-end PC, so I can pick the high version, plus I turn on terrain scatters and really high scatter density. And I can turn up my graphics quality and my shader quality, but you may need to adjust this for your own machine. The rest of these are some personal settings, and then my graphics, I go to full screen. Because I'm on a virtual machine, I have an unusual resolution there. It's going to be for whatever machine you've got, and then again I turn up all the settings. Because hey, I can do that. And there we go. Okay, where's the audio? And then I'll do this with the audio for recording purposes to put up to YouTube. You're not going to hear the audio in this case because I have it turned off, but that's okay. The settings I'm using here will work on your computer as long as it is beefy enough. Now after you make these changes, you're going to need to restart the game because that'll make the scatter objects populate properly, and it will rebuild the Copernicus caches for all of the celestial bodies in there. And if you add more add-ons after this, you might have to go through the process of erasing your settings config and doing it over again to make sure you've got a proper Je ne sais quoi terrain setting. Now we should be ready to at least try out the basic game here with the basic graphics settings. We're not going to use that default game that we tested with though. That was based on stock Kerbin. We're going to need the Je ne sais quoi game there. There we go. So I create a default for that. Set the communications DSN value to 4 times. Otherwise, any other settings you want to do in here can be your preference. This makes sure that ComNet works properly in this upscaled system. Alright, here we go. So we'll just plop the Kerbal X on the launch pad. We're not going to go anywhere, but we're going to make sure that the Kerbal Space Center monolith is properly planted in the ground. If you picked a wrong terrain setting or there's a problem with the terrain setting, this object may be suspended above the ground or floating or might even be sunken underneath. If you see that, make sure you exit, erase the settings config, and do all that stuff over again. Let's take a look around. This is just the basic system with no additional graphics add-ons. Kerbin looks gorgeous as usual, along with the moon. There we go, there's Midnus, not too bad at all. Duna, well, this Duna is not the Duna you know from stock. Those poles are much, much smaller. Ike, nothing really to talk about there. Same with Edna, Dak, and Drez. They should look pretty good because they're not dependent so much on atmospheres or graphical add-ons and so on. There's good old Drez. Yes, Drez does exist. I did a whole episode on Drez. Here is Jewel. Even without a cloud add-on, you can see that gorgeous cloud layer on the so-called surface of Jewel. There's Lathe. Lathe is a little easier to deal with without graphical add-ons. That sun is just tiny out at this distance, of course. Not too bad a place to go to. There's Vol, not too bad. Tylo has that atmospheric covering on it here. Bop and Paul are pretty much what you would expect for these guys. Not too bad at all. Look at that. Lindor. Now we should be able to see Lindor's rings, and we can barely see them here, but we don't have anything to adjust the starfield brightness, so we're not going to see the rings well. There's Krell, that world that gave me so much trouble. Aiden. Huygens a lot easier to deal with here, although it still has that thick atmosphere, so be careful if you head out here. Raija, not a problem. Talos, where we're going to visit in the next episode. There we go. Now, places we haven't been to yet. Hammock and Elu out at the Kuiper Belt. There we go. Elu with its really thin atmosphere. Even thinner than Duna's. Okay, Celeste and Tam. Tam, the smallest object in the Je ne sais quoi system. And one of the biggest right here is Nara. Look at this monster. We're going to try to get there eventually. And here are Nara's moons. Amos, I haven't actually taken a close look at this yet. I know it exists. I just wanted to make sure that it looks right. Enon, I don't know how you pronounce that, and Prax. Okay, there's the sun with the stock sun flare from Jade of Mars. Seems to be working just fine. Moho, the brown potato in space, which we know quite well. Eve without its thick atmosphere and clouds. And Gilly. There we go. So, looking pretty good. If you want to start a stock, or rather a regular Je ne sais quoi game, you would now be ready to go. Let's stick in there the remaining add-ons though. We'll need the Community Resource Pack to make rational resources work properly. If you're just going to play a science game, you don't need that, but hey, it'd be a good idea to stick it in there to make sure that rational resources works the way we expected it to. And there we go. Let's get Scatterer in there. That is a very, very new version of Scatterer I've got there. I might have to go back a version because of a problem that I'll show you later on in this video. But it does work. Je ne sais quoi comes with a configuration for Scatterer. This is Eve Redux by the makers of Scatterer, by Blackrack. I'm using his version here for a performance boost. You just need the plugin. You don't need any configurations because Je ne sais quoi comes with a configuration for environmental visual enhancements. Distant Object lets you see planets and moons at faraway distances, and you'll be able to pick them out against the starfield. And like the other ones, Je ne sais quoi comes with a configuration for distant objects. Once again, after you mess with add-ons, you want to delete the caches and delete the settings and those other files again. And make sure that Module Manager builds a fresh cache and that Copernicus builds a fresh cache as well. I think we're ready to go. Did I miss anything? Let's see, what I miss. Oh yeah, I gotta get these. There they go. Oh yeah, since we have Scatterer installed, we can edit the sun flare to use the Scatterer sun flare instead of the standard sun flare. This is Jade of Mars sun flare for Scatterer. It looks quite nice, and you can edit these files using Notepad. Set this setting here to true to enable the Scatterer sun flare. Now, Copernicus Continued and Copernicus Bleeding Edge already include configurations for this breaking ground object, so you can delete this DLL here that you don't need. My rocks are bigger than yours. That can go away. If you happen to have that and you're using a new Copernicus, get rid of that. And let's launch this one more time. Because it's resetting the configs, it's going to make a brand new configuration. Now look at this memory go up. Yeah, we're redoing all this again, and we're going to have to adjust the graphics settings and the terrain detail settings. I just want to show you just how massive this installation gets. As it loads these objects, it peaked there at 10 gigabytes, and we already exceeded 8 gigabytes just at the main menu. Here I am with my favorite general settings. These can be whatever you want. Just leave the curb and time alone. I got Juno Sequoia high. Yep, let's make sure we're on that. Terrain details, terrain shaders, my graphics mode, and so on. And there we go. We'll need to restart the game again to make sure that it reloads with that terrain detail setting. And there we go. And so we got Juno Sequoia working with just the basic graphic settings, and now we have all these graphic add-ons installed. We should be ready to go with the graphic add-ons. There's Kerbin's atmosphere and clouds in the main menu. Let's go back to our save game here. Make sure that the monolith is firmly planted once again. Oh, yep, where is it? Get over there. Yep, that looks about right. The clouds don't look about right, though. This is what I was saying. I think I may have too new a version of Scatterer. Or maybe I just am in the wrong time of day, I don't know. But I couldn't see any colored clouds. Usually you see that during the sunsets and sunrises. Hey, I can check that again. If that happens to you, just go back a version of Scatterer and see if it makes a difference for you. Otherwise, the clouds are working as they're supposed to. Let me show you distant object enhancement is working. We'll turn on the name so you can see nearby moons and planets. I also turn on distant vessel rendering because I like to see things as they come up. But hey, you can set this to what you want. Oh yeah, it doesn't close it when I hit apply. I gotta do that. Okay, so do we have any distant objects? Oh, there we go. That looks like Duna right there in front of the sun, or maybe it's behind it, I don't know. With all the graphical add-ons installed, let's take another look at all these worlds. There is Kerbin. Beautiful blue marble. We'll go backwards this time, we'll check out Gilly, and then we'll check out Eve with its really, really thick and cloudy atmosphere. Look at that, and lightning strikes in the background. There they are. There we go. Moho, once again, the brown potato in space. Notice that the shadows are a lot darker. And there's the sun with the Scatterer sun flare. There we go. Back to Kerbin. Out to the moon. Where's the moon? There's the moon. Beautiful gray rock. There we go. There's Minmus. And Duna's going to look quite different with its atmosphere and its water vapor clouds and its dust storms. Let's see if we can see those. We can at least see some of the lighter clouds. Look at that. Anyway, Ike is looking great as usual. There we go. Once again, Edna and Dak and Drez are their beautiful selves. Oh, we're on the dark side of Drez. The really dark side. I also tend to remove a couple of plugins from environmental visual enhancements, but I do keep the lightning strikes there on Jewel. What I tend to do is I'll remove the planetary shadows and city lights from environmental visual enhancements because they just look out of place to me. Scatterer does shadows just fine. There's Val and Tylo with its atmosphere. Look at that. These worlds tend to be a little bit brighter with Scatterer installed. It helps with the gameplay a lot. There's Lindor. Let's see if we can get a proper look at that ring system. There we go. Look at that. Good job there, Lindor. There's Krell, my nightmare world. Aiden. Beautiful. Huygen, the orange beach ball is now itself orange beach ball self again. Raija sporting its lovely atmosphere. Once again, Talos, where we'll be heading to in the next episode. Hammock and Elu are looking their best as usual. Elu's atmosphere does stick out a little bit now. There we go. A little brighter. It should make things a little easier to see once we get out to Elu. Really thin atmosphere, even thinner than Duna's. Look at that. Celeste and Tam. And finally, Nara's little system, which we'll get to in just a bit. There it is. And now we can see that wild incline, that wild inclination that Nara's orbit has. Let's just take a quick look at Nara's moons, make sure they're okay as well. There we go. Amos is looking its best. There we go. Enon and Prax. Alright. And when we jump back to the sun, we'll wrap this up. So, if you want to add more add-ons, now would be the time. Now we got everything else working. And that's how you get Juno Sequoia looking really nice. Until the next episode, I'm not Manly. Fly safe.